Hello, and welcome to my lesson on Qixi Festival. It's a traditional festival that celebrates love. And in this lesson, I will answer these questions: what, when, where, who, why, and how. Also, my sources are from Wikipedia, About.com by Rhonda Parkinson, and Travel Guide. Okay, let's start with the introduction. Oh, here's a picture of a traditional picture of Qixi Festival. And again, these are the questions I will answer in this lesson. First is the introduction. Then I will answer each of these questions. What is Qixi Festival? When is Qixi Festival? Where in the world is it celebrated? Who is the holiday about? Who celebrates it? How is it celebrated? And a review. So let's get started with the introduction. Within different cultures, there's many holidays of love. What holidays of love are celebrated? One of the most famous ones from America is St. Valentine's Day. There's other ones, St. George's Day, which is in Spain. And there's another one that was celebrated, I think, in Israel or Turkey in the Middle East. Okay, now let's go to the names of Qixi Festival. There's many different names. It's also known as Qixi Festival, Double Seventh Day, and Night of Sevens, and the Magpie Festival. What is Qixi Festival? It's a festival that honors love. It celebrates the annual meeting of two lovers in traditional mythology. When is Qixi Festival? It follows the lunar calendar, so because of that, the date changes every year. In 2014, it was April 2. In 2014, it was August 2nd. 2015 is August 20th. And 2016 will be August 9th. Where in the world is it celebrated? It's celebrated in China and Taiwan. Excuse me. Who is Qixi Festival about? You know, St. Valentine's Day in the USA is about St. Valentine who married couples without the permission of the church. That is a pretty common known story. Okay. Also, Qixi Festival, there's a legend related to that day, and this is the legend of Niulang and Jinu. There's many variations of the legend, and I'll tell you some of those in this lesson. Basically, it's a legend related to two stars, Altar and Vega, and a third star, Deneb. And the legend explains those three stars, Altar, Vega, and Deneb. Here's a picture of the three stars. Altar, Vega, and Deneb is in the middle. Niulang is the symbol of Altar. Jinu is the symbol of Vega. And then here's the triangle, and you see that Altar and Vega are joined together by Deneb. So now I'll explain the legend of Niulang and Jinu and several variations. First, the two lovers. The legend is about two lovers. Niulang, a cowherder, and Jinu, a weaver girl. This legend has been known since the Han Dynasty. And the Han Dynasty took place from 200 BC to 200 AD. Okay, this is the basic common legend of the Niulang and Jinu. And I'll explain the variations later, okay? So, the basic legend. Niulang and Jinu fell in love, but their love was prohibited. They were banished to opposite sides of the Silver River. One time per year, at the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, they are reunited. And here's a picture of their reunification, I guess you could say. This is the number 1 variation, okay? A young cow herder named Niulang saw Zinu, who is the goddess's 7th daughter, and Zinu is the goddess's 7th daughter, and she escaped from heaven. Without Niulang and Zinu married and fell in love and married without Zinu's mother's permission. So together they lived happily and had 2 children. The goddess was upset that Zinu married a man, Niulang, because Zinu is a goddess, heavenly being, remember? So Zinu was commanded to return to heaven by her mother. Niulang chased her by killing an axe and entered heaven by wearing the skin of the axe. The goddess discovered Niulang and divided the heavens. Niulang as Altar and Zinu as Vega reunite when magpies, a type of bird, form a bridge, reuniting the 2 on the 7th day of the 7th month. And here in this picture you see Zinu and Niulang, the bridge formed by magpies, and their 2 children. This is number 2 variation. All 7 daughters of the goddess visited Earth. And Niulang noticed them because they're beautiful, right? While they were bathing in a river, he ran off with their clothes. Zinu, the youngest and the prettiest, asked Niulang about their clothes, obviously without wearing any. Because Niulang saw her naked, he married Zinu, and together they lived happily. Though the goddess felt abandoned by Zinu and ordered her to return to heaven. When Zinu was in heaven, the goddess took pity on Niulang and Zinu and their love and the fact that they were separated. So, because she had pity on them, she allowed them 1 night together every year, the 7th night of the 7th lunar month. The magpies form a bridge with wings, so Zinu can meet her husband, Niulang. And here is another picture that symbolizes Qixi festival. This is the 3rd variation, okay? Are you ready? Niulang and Zinu were both fairies, so this one's a little bit different. They were both fairies who lived on opposite sides of the Milky Way. The Jade Emperor of Heaven brought them together and they fell in love. Because of their strong love, they didn't work. They weren't doing what they were supposed to. So the Jade Emperor of Heaven separated them and allowed them to meet only once per year. There's a similar picture of what we've seen before. Now let's watch some more variations of Niulang and Zinu and their legend. So let's watch the first one.
Happy Chinese Valentine's Day!
We have a Valentine's Day?
Yep, it's called Qixi Festival. It's on the 7th day of the 7th month of the lunar calendar. It's also known as the Magpie Festival sometimes.
Ooh, pies.
Not pies, magpies.
Yeah, I know. But what do these birds have to do with Valentine's?
Well, it goes back to the ancient Chinese legend when a beautiful weaver girl, Zhinu, who's actually a goddess, went out to play in the human realm and met a human cow herder called Niulang and fell in love. They married and had 2 kids. When Zhinu's grandmother, the Queen Mother of the Heaven, Wang Wu Nyang, found out, she wasn't too happy.
Are mother-in-laws ever happy?
The Queen Mother-in-law was so pissed that Zhinu married a mere mortal that she scratched a wide river in the sky with a hairpin and separated the 2. thus forming the Milky Way between the stars Altair, which is Niulang, and Vega, which is Zhinu. Zhinu must sit forever on one side of the river, weaving her loom, while Niulang watches her from afar while taking care of their two children. The two were so sad they cried continuously. The magpies in the sky pitied them so much that they form a bridge once a year so the star-crossed lovers can see each other.
So they like step on birds? Aren't they too heavy for birds? I mean, maybe the weaver goddess lady, because she's light, because maybe she's a goddess. But the cowherder guy is definitely going to kill some birds.
Dan, it's a story. Gosh, can't you just be a bit romantic?
I can be romantic. Want me to prove it?
No, not really.
Wait, if it's Chinese Valentine's Day, shouldn't Chinese people go out on dates?
Well, traditionally on this day, young girls will have needlework competitions or burn papers and items and offerings to the weaver girl. Single and newlywed women all celebrate the festival and make offerings.
So there's no chocolates, dating, or kissing? I think I prefer the American Valentine's.
Well, this year in 2013, Qixi is on August 13th, and if you're watching in 2014, August 2nd, and August 20th if you're watching in 2015.
Hey, Carmen, would you
No.
be you?
No.
And that pair is quite humorous, aren't they? Okay, now let's watch the second video of a variation of the Zhinu and Niulang legend.
The most popular legend of Qixi is without a doubt that of Niulang and Zhinu. As the story goes, a cowherd Niulang met Zhinu, a weaver maid who was also the seventh daughter of the celestial Jade Emperor. It was love at first sight, and they were soon married. When the Queen of Heaven discovered her daughter was married to a mortal on earth, she forced Zhinu back to the skies. Niulang, carrying his children, put on a pair of magic shoes and set off on a chase after the love of his life. The queen, enraged by Niulang's pursuit, took her hairpin and slashed it across the sky, creating the Milky Way that separated the couple forever. But all was not lost. Moved by their love and devotion, thousands of magpies form a bridge across the Milky Way to reunite the couple. This, however, was only possible once a year on the seventh night of the seventh month, and is how Qixi came to be. In astrology, the constellations Vega and Altair, representing the lovers, are in fact 16 light years away, meaning that even if Niulang could call out to the goddess weaver, it would take 16 years for her to hear her husband's voice. But that doesn't stop people from gazing at the night sky to spot the two stars shining on opposite sides of the Milky Way and pray for everlasting love like Niulang and Zhinu's. The festival can be traced back to the Han Dynasty. Back then, it was not just a special day for couples, but also for single girls. On the eve of Qixi, unmarried girls would pray to Zhinu for wisdom and dexterity, hoping to find their other half. Nowadays, the festival is more commercialized than ever, as females remain the center of attention. Bouquet of roses, romantic candlelit dinners are now the norm. Men would need to add an extra touch of magic like Niulang to catch a girl's heart. Shenli, CCTV.
Now let's continue on with the lesson. Now I'll answer the question, how? How is it celebrated? Many girls and young women celebrate and commemorate this day. But what do? They often go to a temple and pray to Zhinu for an excellent sewing skill. Why? Well, they see that as an attribute of a good wife. So if women can sew very well, that means they could be good wives. They also wish for someone who would be a good husband. There may be traditional contests that actually involve sewing as well. These are other traditional activities. A sewing contest. Girls may gather toiletries and they may sew and prepare fruit to worship Zhinu. Girls may give offerings to Zhinu, including fruit, flowers, tea, or facial powder. Single or newly married women may worship Niulang and Zhinu and bid farewell to them. This means their marriage will be good and their wife is in good standing with their husband's family. They may also light lanterns and put them on Love River, which is in Kaohsiung. And people may gaze up romantically at the stars of Vega and Altar. Again, here's a picture of Altar, which symbolizes Niu Lang. Vega symbolizes Zhinu, and the Neb, that is, brings them together. Okay, so I've just finished talking about the story behind Qixi Festival and the story of Niu Lang and Zhinu. So there's many stories that we may know of or may not know of related to Western Valentine's Day on February 14th. So now let's compare these stories and to see if there's any similarities between the story of Qixi Festival and Niu Lang and Zhinu and stories from Western Valentine's Day. So, and there's many stories related to Western Valentine's Day because they're related to love, from culture, from stories, even from a movie that I will show later. There's 4 different stories related to Western Valentine's Day. The first one is the story of Cupid. Second one is the story of Saint Valentine. Number 3 is the story of Romeo and Juliet. And the fourth one is the story of Will and Elizabeth from the movies Pirates of the Caribbean. So let's get started with the story of Cupid. Now, did you know Cupid was an actual person or being? Many people who are familiar with Western Valentine's Day see Cupid on cards, and that Cupid is a baby with wings and a bow and arrow. There's even some sayings, some idioms related to Cupid, such as someone is struck by Cupid's arrow, meaning they have fallen in love at first sight. But who is Cupid? Well, according to a new resource, a source on history.com, it all starts in ancient Rome several hundred years ago. The Greeks called him Eros. So his name is Cupid or Eros. Cupid, who was a god who was very handsome. Gods and humans alike were jealous of his handsomeness and his male beauty. Now Cupid shot arrows with a gold tip, meaning, and if the arrow hit someone, the victim of the arrow, they would fall in love with the first person or thing that they see. Cupid also shot arrows with a lead tip, and the victim of that arrow was filled with disgust towards a person that they see. Now, this is kind of the story behind Cupid. Now, Cupid's mother, Venus, felt jealous of a beautiful human princess named Psyche. She commanded her son, Cupid, to make her fall in love with something hideous, because Cupid alone had that power with his arrows. But as he is chasing Psyche and as he's kind of implementing his strategy, Cupid himself is pricked by one of the gold-tipped arrows, and the first person he sees after that is Psyche, so Cupid falls in love with Psyche. He being a god, he is a god, and one of the Roman gods, and Psyche is a human, so because of that, Cupid needed to keep his identity secret. Now, there's many other variations to this story of if they got married, and that's just one variation. So now let's watch a short clip from the History Channel about the story of Cupid.
You might know Cupid as a baby with wings. Well, he wasn't always like that. A long time ago, he was kind of a sex symbol. It all started about 3,000 years ago with the Greeks, except the Greeks had a different name for Cupid. They called him Eros, and that's where you get the word erotic. Supposedly, he was so handsome, he could make both gods and humans go weak in the knees. His bow and arrow has been around for a long time, too. In Greek mythology, he has two kinds of arrows, gold for love and lead for hate. In one story, he shot a gold arrow at Apollo, the sun god, which made him fall in love with a nymph named Daphne. Then, Cupid shot Daphne with a lead arrow. So Apollo goes running after Daphne, but then she wanted nothing to do with him. In another story, Eros gets a taste of his own medicine. The myth goes like this. Cupid's mom, Venus, was jealous of a beautiful mortal named Psyche. So Venus sends Cupid out to make her fall in love with some hideous creature. Instead, Cupid gets pricked by his own arrow and falls in love with Psyche. And because he was a god and she was a human, he had to keep his identity secret. But that's just an old Roman myth. Oh, and it was the Romans who actually started calling Cupid, Cupid. Later on in the Renaissance, artists painted Cupid like these infant angels they called putti. By then, the whole handsome image was gone. And when people started sending valentines in the 1700s, the baby Cupid with the bow and arrow image stuck. That's pretty much how you'll find him today. Over the years, he's developed into kind of an icon for how unpredictable love can be. You'll see him in a blindfold, 'cause love is blind. Or any number of scenarios to show how love comes in all shapes and sizes. And of course, you'll see him on February 14th, spreading love to unsuspecting people everywhere. Cupid, a 3,000-year-old god of love, in diapers.
Okay, wasn't that an interesting video about Cupid? Now let me tell you about a short story of Valentine. The Western holiday, Valentine's Day, is named after a person, his name being Valentine. But do we know much about him? Do we know why there's Valentine's Day and what the source of this cultural holiday is? Well, let me answer those questions for you. Okay. So who is Valentine? Valentine was a priest in the Catholic Church in 3rd century Rome. An emperor at that time ruled that marriage was forbidden. Saint Valentine and the church valued marriage and thought it was important and necessary, and in secret, Valentine, as a priest, helped couples enter in holy matrimony in secret. So he would perform weddings for couples in secret. The emperor discovered Valentine and found out he was doing this and arrested him. So then Valentine was sent to jail. While he was in jail, Valentine himself fell in love with a woman who was healed from blindness. She was blind, but Valentine healed her, and afterwards they fell in love. Before he was executed, Valentine wrote a letter to his love and signed it, "From your Valentine." So that is the reason why people send Valentines to each other on Valentine's Day. And lastly, he is believed to be executed on February 14th. So that is a short story of the person Valentine, what he did and why, and now it has become the Valentine's Day we know today. Now let's watch another clip, another story. This one is animated with cartoons, so it's cute, about Valentine and what he did. So now let's watch this video.
Saint Valentine was a bishop who lived in the 3rd century in Rome. During his lifetime, the Roman Empire was crumbling down from the attacks of surrounding tribes. Emperor Claudius II, who ruled during the chaos, believed that marriage made soldiers weak. He issued an edict that forbade marriage to ensure the quality of his soldiers. The ban on marriage was a great shock. The kind bishop noticed the injustice of the decree. He held the law of the church and helped lovers who came to him, uniting them in a holy matrimony. But it was only a matter of time before the emperor heard about this friend of lovers and had him arrested. Valentine was imprisoned. While waiting for his sentence, his jailer Asterius approached him to use his saintly power and heal his blind daughter. Valentine succeeded, and her sight was restored. They became close and fell in love. After a while, the emperor issued a verdict. Valentine was asked to agree with the emperor about the ban on marriage, thus giving up his religion. Valentine refused. Just before his execution, Valentine asked for a pen and paper and signed a farewell message to his lover. From your Valentine, a phrase that lived ever after.
Okay, so the last two stories that we have been discussing about Cupid and also about Valentine, Saint Valentine, have been about have been and are about symbols of the Western Valentine's Day on February 14th. So those stories behind those two symbols, Cupid and Valentine, aren't really. There's some comparison between Niu Lang and Jinu, but maybe a very small comparison and a large contrast. These last two stories I'll be talking about, Romeo and Juliet, and also Will and Elizabeth from Pirates of the Caribbean, there's more similarities of these stories compared to Niu Lang and Jinu. These are love stories of two characters who are separated by something or some people. So now let's start with the first story, the love story of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is a play written by William Shakespeare. And it's one of the most famous and popular plays he has written. In the play, it starts off with a situation between two families in a city. These two families, Capulet and Montague, they are battling each other. They are in a big argument over power and control in a city. One son in the Montague family, Romeo, unknowingly falls in love with a daughter in the Capulet family, Juliet. So when they fall in love, they don't really know who they are. Days after only falling in love, Romeo and Juliet are united in marriage in secret. Because when their families find out, when the Montague family finds out that Romeo loves Juliet, and when the Capulet family finds out that Juliet loves Romeo, there's conflict, right? So because of this conflict, members of each family are killed. And Romeo is to blame, is put to blame, so he is banished from the city. And while all of this is going on, Juliet's parents force her to marry a prince or someone in the city with high standing. Okay? Moments before her wedding with this prince, Romeo returns and thinks Juliet is dead because she's taken a drug to put herself in a coma, basically, to help her sleep for a long time. So when Romeo comes back, Romeo thinks Juliet is dead. He drinks poison and he dies. Only, spoiler alert, only Juliet isn't dead. She wakes up, but she sees Romeo's body. So she takes his dagger and stabs herself and also dies. When learning of their son and daughter's love and also deaths, the Montague family and the Capulet family reconcile and stop fighting. The story of Romeo and Juliet is known to be one of star-crossed lovers because from the moment they fell in love, they couldn't be together because their families didn't allow it. And they ended up dying for their love. So they were destined to not be together even though they did fall in love. And that is similar to the story of Niu Lang and Jinu, of the two stars, Altair and Vega, being on different sides of the galaxy, different sides of the Milky Way, and they are united only one time every year. So I feel Niu Lang and Jinyu are also star-crossed lovers, which is similar to Romeo and Juliet. That is why I brought up the story of Romeo and Juliet to you today. Now, since it was written in, many hundreds of years ago, Romeo and Juliet has been adapted and changed and has been performed on the stage and also in a movie. In 2013 was the most recent movie adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. So I have for you a trailer of that movie. So here, let's watch this trailer of Romeo and Juliet. Okay, and the last love story between two people that I find is similar between the story of Niu Lang and Jinyu, the story of Will and Elizabeth. I feel it's similar to the love story from Qixi Festival, Niu Lang and Jinyu. But why? So let me explain this love story of Will and Elizabeth in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. In the first movie, The Black Pearl, The Curse of the Black Pearl, the audience knows from the very beginning of the movie that Will loves Elizabeth. And at the end, spoiler alert, we learn that Elizabeth reciprocates and chooses Will. In the second movie, Dead Man's Chest, a new character is introduced, Davy Jones, and he is the captain of the Flying Dutchman. And so, and what does he do? What does that mean? That means whenever someone dies at sea, they go to the Flying Dutchman, and Davy Jones is their captain. Davy Jones, his heart is in a chest, hence the title Dead Man's Chest. Okay, so, and Davy Jones, being the captain of the Flying Dutchman, he goes between two worlds, the netherworld and Earth. So from the second movie, the audience knows that. Now in the third movie, at World's End, we come back to Will and Elizabeth. In the movie, actually during a battle scene that you'll watch very soon, Will and Elizabeth get married. So now let's watch that clip. Okay, wasn't that a romantic clip of the movie? Oh boy, it was. Okay. Now, in the clip you just saw, Will and Elizabeth get married and they're fighting. Who are they fighting? They're fighting the crew from the Flying Dutchman and Davy Jones' boat, and Davy Jones' ship. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the ending of the movie, so I hope you don't mind, because it's part of the Will and Elizabeth story. Davy Jones, who is the captain of the Flying Dutchman, he fatally stabs Will in this battle. So that means Will's heart needs to go in Dead Man's chest. Because his heart goes in Dead Man's chest, he is the new captain of the Flying Dutchman. And again, the Flying Dutchman goes between the netherworld and Earth and can only come back to Earth once every 10 years. So, Will and Elizabeth are separated by time and are reunited one day every 10 years. That is similar to Niu Lang and Jinyu. They are united once every year on Qixi Festival. So you see that the two love stories are similar. Now, let's watch another clip of Will and Elizabeth. This is before he goes back to the netherworld. Now, when Will comes back after being separated from Elizabeth for 10 years, what happens? Let's watch. Okay, so to finish this lesson about Qixi Festival, I thought I'd share with you 4 stories. 2 being symbols of Western Valentine's Day on February 14th. These two symbols are Cupid and Valentine. Now I also thought we could compare the story of Niulang and Jinnu for Qixi Festival and two love stories that are similar and are related to Valentine's Day. These two love stories are the love story of Romeo and Juliet and the love story between Will and Elizabeth. Both of these couples are separated by time or space or by arguments, right? So Romeo and Juliet couldn't be together because of their families were enemies. And Will and Elizabeth couldn't be together very, very much or very often because Will had to be captain of the Flying Dutchman and go to the netherworld. Will and Elizabeth were reunited one time every 10 years. So you see, these two love stories, Romeo and Juliet, being star-crossed lovers, and Will and Elizabeth from Pirates of the Caribbean, are similar to the love story between Niulang and Jinnu, which is a legend from Qixi Festival. Because they're similar, that is why I included them in this lesson for you today. Now here are 3 other videos that you can watch on your own time. And that concludes my lesson of Qixi Festival. I hope you enjoyed it and have learned the foundation and basis for not only Qixi Festival, but also a little bit more about the Western Valentine's Day on February 14th. Thank you for watching. Take care.